So our next speaker, I invited her to speak because one of the biggest challenges that people talk about when trying to convince their boss to use Clojure is that the boss thinks it's going to be hard to hire Clojure programmers. And sort of paradoxically, when I'm talking to people about the job prospects in Clojure, they think it's going to be hard to find a job in Clojure. So there are simultaneously too many jobs and too many programs. So let me see a show of hands. Who is working in Clojure professionally? Wow. Yeah, paid to work. Okay, and who is hiring in Clojure at your company?
Guys.
Okay. That's cool. You should find each other.
Forgot to mention the people that are
Oh, yes.
Stealing all my talk.
Yes. I'm going to let her go. I am very happy to have Rebecca Kinsella speak about this. She is at Funding Circle. Funding Circle is hiring, no?
Yes,
Oh, yeah?
yes, we're hiring.
All right. Thank you. Give her a round of applause.
Thanks, Eric. So, yeah, it's great to actually, this is my first talk at a conference, so it's great to kind of see a lot of familiar faces in the crowd. As Eric mentioned, my name is Rebecca Kinsella. I have been working at Funding Circle for the last 2.5 years as a technical recruiter, based in the US, but I've hired engineers globally across Berlin, London, the whole thing. For those of you who don't know what Funding Circle does, we're a financial technology company that lends money to small businesses globally. Created an online marketplace lending platform that connects borrowers and investors, and we use Clojure and Kafka streams to build that across a global platform. So today I'm going to talk to you about hiring, but you can really use the fundamentals of this for hiring any kind of engineer. It doesn't have to be Clojure, but I will touch on what I've done with hiring Clojure over the last couple of years. So a little overview about what we're going to talk today. We're going to need to talk about a little bit of context in terms of hiring at FC. So, you know, I've been hiring mostly Clojure only at Funding Circle, so it's going to be mostly just kind of a run through of like what we've done in the last couple of years hiring there. And then we'll go into some information in terms of obstacles. There's quite a few of them. Throughout this talk, there's plenty of things you can do in terms of hiring. There's plenty of obstacles, but really I'm just going to touch on a few because I could write a novel about this, right? And then, of course, how to overcome those obstacles, which is the most important thing, whether it's through branding efforts or just being flexible in the workplace. And then finally, we'll chat about building a community within your company that will lead to higher retention, because that's a big part as well. So a little bit of background. I've seen a lot of growth in our engineering team in the business as a whole over the last couple of years, and it gives you kind of a good picture of how to build out your team. I'm going to focus a lot on my experience, obviously, at Funding Circle, but you know, we can kind of take it from there. So context. So when I joined Funding Circle in the fall of 2015, we had 250 plus employees in 2 offices, so London and San Francisco, and we had a lot of contractors and things at the time as well, but mostly all of our full-time employees were 250 plus. We operated in the US and the UK markets, and we had only 4 Clojure engineers, and that included our chief architect, and they weren't going on any specific projects. It was basically just 4 engineers with a pipe dream, basically, at the time, right? Twinkle in our architect's eye. So fast forward to today, and we have 750 employees globally, in offices, 6 offices, so San Francisco, Portland, Berlin, Amsterdam, Bulgaria, London, as well as remote, too. We're operating across the UK, the US, Germany, and the Netherlands. We now have 64 engineers at Funding Circle working with Clojure, and they're working across 3 different domains. So that includes the marketplace team, which I was talking about the platform, and then the data team as well as the architecture team. So we didn't get from 4 to 64 in like 2 and a bit years without some hard work and strategic planning. So next we talk about, I'm going to touch on a few obstacles. There's plenty. Those can include salary, it can include bandwidth. Maybe it's your boss, trying to convince your boss. Maybe you're a small team and you're trying to be that programmer/recruiter. I'm sure everyone loves that job. And then even figuring out like kind of the best location for your team. So I think Eric already kind of did this, but like how many people right now are looking to hire Clojure engineers? Okay, cool. So like take a look around each of you, right? Because this is how you're going to help build up your team anyway. And how many are looking for jobs, right? Hands up. Yeah. Okay, cool. That's quite a few. You can also come talk to me afterwards if you like. We're still hiring, by the way. And so you can see there's like it could be that there's a shortage of talent, but I don't think that's really the case. I think it's more about where to find them, right? And how to look for them. So I'm going to talk about the job skills though. So this quote, I put it as anonymous. I know who this person is, but I didn't ask them if I could use this quote. So I just put anonymous down. But one of the leaders at Funding Circle says this to me over and over again, that hiring software engineers is the #1 thing that keeps him up at night, right? Keeps him awake at night. Now I don't know if all of you feel that way, like that you are losing sleep over hiring Clojure engineers, but one thing is for certain is that it is really difficult to hire, right? So at this point in time at Funding Circle, and this is pretty average across the Bay Area, it takes on average 60 to 90 days to hire one software engineer, right? And it's not uncommon for a company like of our size to be looking to hire 100 plus engineers in a year or more, right? If you think about the size of like scale of like Google or Facebook, I mean, those guys are hiring for thousands of people a year, and it's not an easy task. But they also have a team of like hundreds of thousands of recruiters too, so they have a little bit of a head on that. Just context on that. When I joined, I was pretty much the only recruiter. At the beginning of last year, I was still pretty much the only tech recruiter hiring. We built out our team to 6, but that's still a very small recruiting team, right? So some of the difficulties that I found are regarding around salary and like how quickly that changes and the competition around it. So this map was created by Hire.com. Hire.com is a platform for basically hiring and looking for jobs. On average, you know, the salaries in the U.S., this is the average of the salaries in the U.S. based on the beginning of 2017. So this has gone up a lot since then. But the Bay Area has the highest salaries and the lowest unemployment rate anywhere. Less than a 0% unemployment rate. That means that some engineers have multiple jobs, okay? Less than 0% unemployment in the Bay Area. That's a lot of competition when you consider that most people are like not looking, right? How many of you get messages from recruiters like on a daily or weekly basis from like LinkedIn? And how many of you like it? Yeah, didn't think so, right? So think about it from our perspective of trying to recruit. It's like you really have to be pretty creative when you're getting to that point. So one fact I also find really interesting is at the beginning of 2017, boot camps like App Academy and Dev Bootcamp were offering a guaranteed or basically guaranteeing a salary of $100K to their like anyone who graduated from their program in their first job. It's a lot of money for someone who's never like worked in an engineering job before, right? By the end of 2017, that number had risen to 120. So 20% growth in 1 year for engineers that are coming out from a boot camp. Like, how crazy is that, right? It's a lot. It's a huge jump. So needless to say, like, competition is really fierce. And then other areas in the U.S. are quickly catching up in terms of in terms of salary. High cost of living is also raising in those other areas. So you think about like Pandora just recently moved from Oakland to Atlanta because of the cost of living, cost of like rent and everything in Oakland. But it's not going to last long in Atlanta now because now you have Pandora there, which is just going to raise salaries and everything else too. So places like London and Paris and Berlin have far lower salaries at the moment than the U.S. This is some attractive places to hire at the moment, but these areas don't actually have low cost of living. These actually places are both like really expensive to live. So the salaries in London and Paris have grown significantly. So I was over in London for a few months this last year, and I watched salaries raise about 20% as well, right? Because you have places like the banks who are trying to up the salaries in order to retain the engineers at their companies so that they don't flee to go to startups like Funding Circle or smaller engineering companies, right? Because you constantly have to keep up with that. One nice thing about Europe in terms of Clojure is there's a lot of talent there. So you have the opportunity to tap into that talent pool there if you have that. Out of curiosity, how many people have operations like in their companies like in Europe? A few? Okay, we'll look for Clojure engineers there, because there's a lot of them. I feel there was more attendees at the Euro Clojure event that I went to than there was at Clojure Conch, right? So there's a huge talent pool there. So if you have the opportunity to do that, I would say do so. So let's stop talking about the obstacles, right? Because everyone wants to know what the fun stuff is, how do you overcome them? And I'm going to talk about my experience in terms of building a brand at Funding Circle So I think the biggest thing for me, I feel that like the most successful way you can hire Clojure engineers is to build a brand around it, right? And you know, it's actually like Clojure is still relatively. I mean, I know David Nolan was saying like the other night, like Clojure's old now. It's 10 years old. I'm like, well, it's not as old as Java, right? So the Java community is really, really large. So trying to build yourself like a Java brand, you know, like within your, it's going to be pretty difficult, right? But Clojure, it's much easier at least at this point. So there are several ways you can build your brand within the Clojure community. One thing that I find super successful is posting to the Clojure Slack group, which now has about 12,000 members in it, a little bit more than that. Don't be afraid to actually reach out to other engineering groups. I know someone down here was saying this as well. It's like people might be looking for jobs that don't program in Clojure right now, but you know, you can teach them how to do so, right? So post on Erlang, first post on Haskell or what have you. In terms of, you know, other things you can do as well is the meetups. So I'll go into that a little bit more detail in the next couple of slides. But meetups and conferences are big ways of tapping into that community. Follow other Clojure programmers and active members of the Clojure community on Twitter. Post and repost, right? Like a lot of people looking for jobs. We've hired several people through Twitter postings and things like that as well. And don't be shy about spreading the word about your project or how awesome your company is. You know, don't be shy about it. You know, just go out there and just do it. If you host talks or if you attend talks or anything, post them on YouTube. People will follow you. That's another way to like open up that market right there. Something that we at Funding Circle hadn't been doing really well was posting videos, but we're now starting to do that with the meetups that we host as well, which is a great way to do that. And also it's a great way to knowledge share. Also publish any kind of like, you know, open source projects and things like that to blogs. We have our own internal blog. If you don't have one at your company, you can start one. But it doesn't have to be your blog, right? You can post on anything else. You can post on Clojure Docs or just kind of be part of the community there, right? And you know, there's many ways of having like, you know, vehicles of branding. And these are just a few of them. You can tap into a lot more. But the big thing that I'll touch on a lot here is consistency, right? If you just post one meetup or one blog, it's probably not going to do much. You know, people might show up, maybe they won't, but it's not really going to build much of anything, right? You want to have to keep doing it over and over and over again for it to see that effect. So we have, I think, probably the most successful branding initiative that we've done at Funding Circle has probably actually been the Clojure Meetups. So we started hosting back in January of 2016, reaching out to actually Zach Tellman, who'd been really big at in Clojure Meetups at Factual, and started hosting our own at Funding Circle. So our first meetup, we had 20 RSVPs and 5 people showed up. Not great, not bad, still 5 people. We hosted every 2 months that year, and continue, we still do. Continue to provide a free meeting space, continue to, you know, provide speakers and different topics and everything. But at the same time the next year, we had 150 RSVPs and 80 attendees showed up. That's huge, right? That's really big, you know, from 5 people to 80 people the next year. Okay, that's a massive amount, right? Now, you could say it might have been because the pizza was fancier. I don't know, and the word got out, but I like to think it was because members of the community spread the word. They knew it could happen. Again, consistency, right? Every 2 months, they knew it was going to be there. It wasn't like it just happened once and then, oh, maybe 6 months later, we decided to have another one, and oh, we didn't have budget for this or that. You can figure it out, right? If you don't have money to like have pizza and you just offer a space, like make it a potluck. Who cares, right? Just at least like bring people, make sure that you can keep doing it over and over and over again. And on it, just, you know, encourage others in your community as well to attend meetups. You don't have to also host. Go to other meetups. Go to other Clojure meetups. Go again and again and again, and people remember, like, oh, that guy, that person works at, you know, Room Key, for example, right? Like, and then they, you know, you can always rely upon them. The next one is about conferences, right? So it could be a Cognitech conference. It could be this conference. Thank you, Eric. Or you could host your own. I don't know if I'm stealing Eric's thunder now. I'm telling you to host your own conference, but you know, do it, right? Like come up with creative ways, like bring people to you, like attract people towards yourself. Last year, Funding Circle attended all 3 Clojure conferences, or Cognitech conferences, sorry. We went to Clojure West, we went to Euro Clojure, we went to Clojure Conj, and we were able to hire for our team globally, right? And the big thing to remember is why I keep bringing up consistency is you may not hire someone at one conference, but you keep going again and again. Not everyone's looking for a job right this second. You can't expect that you're going to go to a conference and every single 400 people that are attending are all looking for jobs. I would love that. That would be amazing. Yes, come, all of you can all join. But that's like not going to be the case. But that person that might be looking for a job then could be looking for a job very soon after, right? And if you build your brand big enough, you know, people will just come to you. It's almost like magic, right? And then, well, I'll see this picture. This is of Amica. Amica is our technical sourcer at Funding Circle. This is at Clojure Con in Baltimore. So she ordered all the swag. She got all the stuff up. The big one was the fidget spinner. Everyone loved that. But she did it all with a dislocated elbow.
Oh, yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's why we recruited so many people. Next one is extending your reach. So in addition to honing your brand, another way to kind of increase your ability to attract a larger talent pool is to be able to hire quickly and be flexible with the different types of employment and work arrangements you offer, right? So flexible work and location is key. So people want to be able to work in different preferences, right? Like if they have like families, maybe they just want to live in the city, maybe they want to live rurally, whatever that may be, right? The more flexible you can be in terms of your employees' work arrangements, the easier it will be for you to hire. Now, the ability to work from home when necessary or having flexible working hours is a big thing for Funding Circle. Hiring contractors, right, for short or long-term projects is also great. Gives you like that kind of extra bandwidth, and there's a lot of people that want to have the freedom of a contract role. And then we have, several engineers actually at Funding Circle wanting to move out of San Francisco because obviously a lot of people want to move out of San Francisco. Actually, out of curiosity, who here doesn't want to live in San Francisco? Yeah, it's my life pretty hard, to be honest, right? So a lot of them wanted to move out. There's a few of them actually, and they moved to Portland. So what do? We opened up a satellite Portland office, and now we hire there too. So having that kind of flexibility and being able to be like, yeah, sure, you can do that. We also have Ryan Neufeld, who's contracting for us kind of on a rolling basis, and he's based in Canada, right? Awesome. We have Augie over here who's joined our team a few months back, and he's based in New York. And what's awesome is that now he can work with our Berlin, our London, and our San Francisco offices, and he's on the architecture team. Like, how great is that, right? Having that flexibility is super important, and having the remote aspect is great as well, okay? So, also think about the fact that it's really costly for us to put people up in offices, especially in San Francisco. It costs a lot for a business too, right? It's not just about people not wanting to live there. It's expensive, it's really expensive. So if you have the opportunity to be able to hire people remotely, or hire people on contract, or so on and so forth, you should do it, right? You should do it. It makes it a lot easier. It's less money for the business, but of course, you also have to have it work for your project and your team, right? You don't want to sacrifice that either. So I'll talk more about remote opportunities. So these are all remote opportunities. This was just my first search on Clojure jobs when I went into Google. And they were basically all remote. So for us, it's been kind of hard because we started off in as I mentioned, we had 4 engineers, no particular project. And we're based across London and San Francisco and then Berlin. And so it's really hard for us because we're okay, we have a project that basically changes every couple of days. How do I give someone remote work and then be never mind, don't work on that anymore, every 48 hours, right? And we're why don't you hire remote? It's well, do you want to work on something where you don't know what it's going to be the next day? Maybe, yeah, but for us, it was really hard with the communication side of things, right? And in terms of really having a project in its infancy, we found it super difficult. But at the same time, we have been trying to build out our team slowly, and it's been working out really well. But we focus on hiring remote, who have worked remote before, right? And understand that kind of concept. And I think a big thing too is having a really solid communication and written documentation when you're hiring remote, right? You can't just kind of have this word of mouth all the time, back and forth, communication. And then people feel oh, I'm remote, but all the decisions are made in the San Francisco office, and I'm not really actually a part of the team. I'm just kind of on the side. You have to actually really do it well. But if you can do it, do so. And it's especially if you have to starting a company and even if you start it remote, it's a great way to be able to hire a lot more talent. So who here is looking for remote engineers? Cool. Who here wants to work remote? Yeah. All right. Sweet, there you go. Again, look around when your hands are raised because I'm trying to help you hire right now. This is it, this is the whole talk. Just you raising your hands and looking at each other. Cool, so it's one thing to hire, it's another thing if you lose someone, right? So who here would rather not be able to hire one person rather than be able to keep someone who has a lot of institutional knowledge? Right? I mean, everyone should raise their hand, right? Because institutional knowledge is key. It's not that difficult to hire, but it is really difficult to replace someone who knows something that you can never replace those 2 years of knowledge, right? So in exercise, I'm going to talk about how you can cultivate a community where you can retain your team too, okay? So solve interesting problems. Let's face it, most people don't want to work on a boring and simple task, right? If you do, I'm really sorry. Having interesting and challenging problems not only help you to recruit, but they also tend to keep your team happy. So at Funding Circle, we're building, a marketplace lending capital. I know I'm repeating myself here, but it's essentially all the financial systems that you would need to transfer money between a small business and an investor. And I'm talking about large investors, like the UK government investors, right? So you don't want to mess with their money, right? And we're doing this on a global scale. So that includes accounting systems, that includes loan servicing engines, UI operations for finance, the whole thing. And we're doing it with Clojure and Kafka streams. So it's not easy because it's never really been done before. It's all new charted territory, it's finance, it's difficult, right? But some people on our team have had the opportunity to work on this problem for the last 2+ years and see it again from its infancy all the way to today where we're actually being able to do something with that, right? Which is pretty incredible. Now, hopefully you have exciting problems to work on with Clojure already and interesting, but interesting problems aren't going to keep your team happy by itself, right? There's more to it. So have a culture of learning and development, right? It's super important. So again, I know we talk about Funding Circle, but this is where all my experience lies. So at Funding Circle, we built out what we call FC Academy. FC Academy is essentially a peer-to-peer learning network with courses across everything from business to leadership to PowerPoint presentation, how to do that, and teaching programming to non-programmers. We have Excel courses, we have JavaScript, we have front-end, we have the whole 9 yards, right? The more you can engage your team and give them a sense of community and growth, the more likely they are to have a stake in the organization, right? And it doesn't have to be this exact model, you can create your own. There are many ways to cultivate that space. We also do host papers we love. We have that during the lunch. And that, again, we have that quite frequently. And that's another way for people to get together and feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves. But again, it's about consistency. If we just did this once and then never did it again, people will be like, well, what happened to it? You cared for a second and then you don't care anymore, you have to do it again and again and again for it to really have an impact. So the next one is hiring for diversity. Now, I don't feel like I have to say this too much or reiterate this too much within the Clojure community, which I'm super thankful for, but diversity is really one of the most effective ways of having a happy team. So again, example, at Funding Circle, we do a culture survey every quarter. So every 3 months, we do a culture survey amongst all the teams, right? And what we found is that again and again, the teams that have diversity within age, color, sexual orientation, ethnicity, across the gamut, always have the highest culture survey scores of the company, right? So there's a key tie there to that. And diverse teams are also more efficient when it comes to delivery, when it comes to building products. I mean, if you have a diverse team, you're probably able to serve a diverse customer base as well, right? And that means ultimately your business is more successful too. So offer or host or be a trainer at Clojure Bridge. That's a great way of being part of that community, right? Even if you don't hire someone in that space right then, what you're saying is basically you're publicizing your commitment to diversity basically out in the Clojure community right then and there, right? And people will notice that. And again, consistency, right? And if you're starting your company or if your company is small, hire for diversity now, right? It's much harder to hire for diversity when you have a larger homogenous employee base. It's just going to be way more difficult, right? So when you have the opportunity to do so, if your company is small, do it then. And the next thing is really staying true to your kind of mission, vision, and values, okay? People want to have a sense of a shared goal and direction. Make them clearly defined so you know what it is, and once they are clearly defined, they become your golden compass, right? It's due north, this direction. So what are you trying to accomplish? How do you see that becoming a reality? And what is your kind of community agreements that give you that shared direction, right? So one thing I believe Funding Circle actually does really well is having that kind of mission of building a better financial world. What is our vision? Our vision is $100 billion lent per year, and in the process creating 3 million jobs per year through the expansion of small businesses. And to give context, we want to lend $100 billion a year, right? Right now we've lent, since we started operation in 2010, we've lent $5 billion globally, in total, right? Most of that's been done in the last couple of years. But that's a big goal, right? We want to do that by 2025, so it's ambitious. And then how do we get there is by living our values. So our values are thinking smart, being open, making it happen, and so on. But really, it doesn't have to be that kind of the specifics, but it's more about making sure that you have something that people can latch onto, and they want to see that there's something kind of bigger than themselves, right? And nurture that within your community. So the last thing really just is about keeping it up. Again, I keep talking about consistency. We've talked about the obstacles. We've talked about building a brand in the Clojure community, how to extend that brand within various talent pools, and how to kind of create a community within your Clojure team where your developers want to stay. But what you want to do is you want to make sure that you keep it up, because ultimately it's a cycle, right? It's always a cycle. In the recruiting world, we call this full cycle recruiting. You can call it whatever you'd like. But actually, out of curiosity, so who here has dedicated recruiters that are hiring for Clojure? All right, for those of you who don't, I suggest hiring someone that will help you do this. Someone who's passionate about it as well, right? And they don't have to be passionate about just Clojure, but passionate about technology, because what you don't want is someone who's I'm just going to recruit, but I have literally no interest in technology, because that's a big thing, is having someone passionate about the technology space is actually a huge gateway to getting other engineers in, and they're dedicated to it, so it's their trade. They know it inside and out. So if you don't have somebody, get somebody. And also, okay, so you have, obviously, you do the full cycle recruiting, you build your brand, right? Building a brand engages passive talent, right, as we call it in the recruiting world, so people who are not necessarily interested in moving right then and there. Once you engage them, then you're able to recruit, which is much easier. Then once you've recruited them, you need to cultivate. You got to keep them interested and happy and retain them there, the retention portion. And then actually retaining, so if you have happy Clojure developers, they refer other Clojure developers. It's like doing the work for you. It's like magic, It's so if you keep people happy, keep people working on it, it's great, right? And then Avi opened up a work opportunities channel, before you even landed in the Clojure sync. Thanks, Avi. But yeah, I think that's kind of ultimately the full cycle of how you're going to be able to build it out. So that's pretty much it. I know it's kind of more of an overview. I'm happy to talk about if anybody has questions or kind of dive into specifics or whatever.
Great talk. So questions are coming around. So what a lot of the stuff you're talking about seems to be kind of expensive. Would you talk about the cost of hiring versus the cost of building your brand and stuff like that?
Yeah. So in terms of building your brand, I think out of all the things I spoke about, most of them are free except for attending a Cognitech conference. Hosting a meetup does not have to be expensive, at all. You can do it, like I said, you can have it via potluck, and you're basically just offering a space. So if you have an IT setup, that's it, right? That's really what you need. You can also do a remote conference as well, right? It doesn't have a remote meetup, which again is it's more about time in terms of cost and you as a person. The only thing that really costs money is attending the conferences. Another good thing is having people speak at conferences is a great way of branding and bringing in that retention as well. And usually they're not going to charge you to speak at a conference. I would suggest probably not speaking at it if you're being paid to speak. Yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah. It half the question. The other half was how much does it cost to hire? You talked about it taking 9 months sometimes to hire.
60 to 90 days.
60 to 90
so 2 to 3 months on average. So we have to pay people. That's expensive. In terms of it depends on if you have a recruiter, you're basically paying them their salary for the year to do all the work for you, and then it's not super expensive. If you're talking about pushing off delivery because you're trying to focus on building something at the same time as hiring something, that becomes very costly as well, right? Specifics will always depend on like what you're doing in terms of like that kind of cost, but like in terms of, I can't really like give out salaries at Funding Circle or anything, but I mean really for us there's not a ton, like I think we pay $10,000 a year for our applicant tracking system, but you could use Excel to do that if you wanted to, right? It doesn't have to be like an applicant tracking system. If you use like LinkedIn, that's another package that you go for. But I don't think, I mean, ultimately, if you're thinking like, do we get a LinkedIn like recruiter thing? It's like, no, go use the Clojure Slack channel. Like, no one wants to receive a message from LinkedIn anyway, right? Like, don't hate LinkedIn, don't hate it. Just like, go to other places, like, go find people on GitHub, go find people on Twitter, like, go find people like, again, in Slack groups, like, go to meetups. Like, it doesn't cost you anything to usually go to a meetup. Like, there's plenty of free ways to get to people and engage them that doesn't require like having like a big Glassdoor package or a big LinkedIn package, right? Like, those things are all just kind of like, you know, for show. We mostly actually use those just for the business side, recruiting.
Great. Dan asks about balancing engineers that are experienced with software development but don't know so much Clojure. Do you hire people who aren't? Yeah,
we do. We're definitely very open to it. We've trained people into Clojure. I think ultimately really about the size of your team. You need to have someone who's kind of a Clojure expert as well as someone who's strong on the design side within your organization who can really be that mentor, and they have to have the bandwidth. So I think that it's really important to hire junior developers as well, but you don't want to do so if you can't mentor and support them. Like, you can't just be like, oh cool, I'm gonna hire a junior developer, or I'm gonna hire someone that doesn't know anything about Clojure, but then I'm just gonna let them like kind of like flop around on like the deep end by themselves while I continue to do like the important work and leave them off by themselves, right? You have to be able to have a kind of a structure or an architecture around your team that says, hey, I have a mid-level developer who knows Clojure who's gonna teach this junior developer who wants to learn Clojure, and then I have this very senior person who's gonna teach another senior person the way about Clojure, or whatever. You have to have paired up, right? It's all about kind of like building your team in a sense where there's that support. If you don't have that support, you're basically like, not only are you going to be risking delivery, but you're also, that person's not going to be very happy, and then you're not going to have retention, right? So again, it's all about that cycle and keeping people supported.
Do you have any advice for the potential recruit for how to become more hireable? How to do, what they could do to...
So someone to be, okay, so are you talking about like on the entry level side or someone that's just not in Clojure that wants to get into it?
Yeah, all of those. Yeah, so like if you were going to hire someone, let's say an experienced programmer that doesn't know Clojure, where would you start? Like, what would you be looking for?
Okay, so for us, like systems is really important, so I'd be looking for someone who understands distributed systems, who understands design really well, multiple data structures, whatever that may be. It doesn't have to be like specifically Clojure. If you can check all those other boxes, like you hired someone who has like he didn't know Clojure, but he had a PhD in distributed systems. It's like, cool, yeah, you can come on over here, we'll teach you Clojure. So I think that if you're a senior, like, highlight the design aspect of like what you know how to do, because when you're hiring, you don't just want people who are like, I'm really good at Clojure, but I'm not good at anything else when it comes to like computers. It's just Clojure, like that's all. We want to hire people who have like a well-rounded skill set. So Clojure ultimately actually isn't the most important thing for us. Like probably more important is understanding systems and design. If you're junior, highlight the other things that you know really well. I think like for us, like we actually focus probably more on boot camps than even like recent grads, because what we've done is we've hired actually like 4 or 5 junior entry level, whatever we want to call it, software engineers from boot camps who all came from finance backgrounds. So they didn't know any like real programming really, other than what they learned in their 12-week boot camp, but they brought like a ton of financial institutional knowledge to a finance company where we're building financial systems. So, highlight the skills that you have in relation to the product as well. It doesn't have to be about specifically whatever engineering team. Like, think about the company as a whole and what they do, and how can you represent yourself to them where it's like, or if someone's looking at your resume being like, whoa, they might not know a bunch of this, but they can bring that to the table, and that's really cool. Like, oh, they worked in a regulated industry before, like, finance, like, yeah.
Cool. What is your interview process like?
Yeah, okay, so the interview process for us is pretty much straightforward across the board. We use different technical tests for different teams, but it's a phone call with me is the first thing. After that, it's a code challenge. Depends on like what team you're on, is like what code challenge you use. And then from there, sometimes we'll do a call with a hiring manager, sometimes not. And then it's an on-site interview. The on-site interview is a pairing. So a code pairing, live code pairing, and then a design portion where it's like whiteboarding. And then we have a talk with either a project, like technical project manager, or a product manager for more like delivery and like prioritization side, and then a chat with the manager of the team. And that's it. It's about 3 hours in total, the on-site interview. The whole interview probably, like the code challenge shouldn't take more than 2 hours. So it's like code challenge, and we're looking into like changing how we do the code challenge as well, because right now it's like a take home. And what we found, like from data that I pulled on our applicant tracking system, is that a lot of people actually drop out in the code challenge phase because it's like one of those things where it's like it's in their hand, but if someone else is moving faster, they might not do it, right? Like they might just be like, oh, I only talked to a recruiter so far. Like I'm not interested enough to like to do this code challenge. So we might move to more of like a live, like online program.
Okay. And you like your process? Is it working?
Yeah, we usually are able to hire people in less than 2 weeks.
So Will Berg has a really interesting question. I'll read it. It at least used to be the case that the way to increase your salary was to switch jobs every 2 years. Is the current difficulty in finding programmers driving up salary increases for programmers who stay at a company?
Not fast enough, no. I'm just being transparent with you. It's really difficult. Like, so we just hired someone actually at Funding Circle. I want to talk about this with as much transparency, but without giving away too many things that I'm not supposed to talk about. So we hired a head of total rewards. So basically what that person does is they look at perks, benefits, everything, right? And I understand that if you have a really small company, you're probably not at a place where you're going to be hiring someone who just looks at total rewards. I get that, but it gives you a sense. And he looks at like kind of everything, the package, the salary, the benefits, what have you. And so he's trying to create like an architecture within the team where basically like you can get like every 6 months or every year you get like a review on your salary. It is really difficult. So the biggest problem is like you hire someone in a certain point in time, salaries raise X number over 2 years. That person is probably more valuable than the person that you're hiring 2 years later, but you're paying the person 2 years later way more than the other person because you have to in order to hire. And it's kind of shit, right? Like it's just, and yes, changing jobs is one thing, but what I would say is like, don't be one of those people that's like every year they just leave to get a higher salary, because ultimately you probably get a bigger increase if you worked at the same place for 4 years, fought for yourself, and then left and got a huge increase, rather than being that person that's like every year I'm just gonna jump because I want to get a bigger salary, right? Like it doesn't look good on your resume. It's like ultimately you're probably only getting like a bit of a bump each time, whereas like you'll probably get much more money if you can show that you've like grown a business over the course of 3 or 4 or 5 years, and then move and then be like, yeah, this is what I demand. Because now it's pretty much illegal most places to ask someone what their current salary is, which means you can just ask for what you want. Do it, right? Like, just like, I'm only allowed to ask, what are your expectations? I'm not allowed to ask like, what were you previously making? What was your last package? I can only ask people, what are your salary expectations? And if they're not in line with what we can afford, I say here, like, that's way out of what I can pay, but I'll tell you what a range is, right? And then based off of that range, how you perform during your interview will dictate that. But fight for your salary every time. Like, don't be afraid to go to your boss and say, this is the work I've done, this is the value I bring to this team, this is what the market rate is out there, I want this. And if you're valued, they should meet that, right? Don't expect people to just bump you up to market level all the time. Because hiring is expensive enough already, right? And the business is always kind of thinking about like cutting costs as well too.
Yeah, and even if they do ask you, you don't have to answer. You can just say, my company won't let me tell you.
That's happened to all of us. What are we supposed to do when somebody asks us?
When I ask you what are your salary expectations?
No, what are they doing?
Oh,
Because I've been
Just don't
asked that so
answer.
many times.
you say, you know what your response is? My expectation is this. And you don't tell them. no one's gonna push you to the point like, no, I really need to know. It's like, that's nice. This is what I want. Cool. You wanna know? Great, there's a lot of things I wanna know too, but you can know what I wanna make. You know?
So a few.
All I can tell you is what's happening.
Yeah, and I know that I've been asked the same thing when I go into jobs, and I'm like, this is what I'm expecting. I won't settle for less than this, right? I won't sign for less than this. Because ultimately, they're trying to close you, so it doesn't matter what you're previously on. If they're just trying to give you what you're previously on, look, you can go somewhere else and make more, right?
Have a minimum number before you go into it.
Exactly. I will not go less than this. And then other than that, I'm negotiable. But like, you can also have your high wage too, like, this is what I want. You won't get me for less than this, and we'll negotiate, right? It can be a negotiation. Just don't tell them what you're on.
I actually have a video on my site. I did an interview with someone who's a coach for this kind of negotiation, like after the interview, and it's a really good interview. It's on my site. It's free. I'll post it in there for this talk. A few people are interested in how you hire a recruiter to do the hiring of your program.
Yeah, so I focus a lot on. The interview is pretty similar, so I do like a case study with a recruiter. One good trick is if you get reached out to on LinkedIn and they actually have an interesting message, reach back out to them and say, no, I don't want a job with you. Right? Because it's like, they sent a good message. Because most of the messages you get, right? Like, I get messages all the time. It's like, I think make a really great senior back-end Clojure engineer. It's like, I've never programmed a day in my life in Clojure. Like, if you just sent me a batch message, right? But like, you just word searched Clojure. Like, maybe you should just put not recruiter in your search, and maybe this wouldn't happen anymore. But like, if you can find people like through that, that's a great way to do it. Interview process-wise, like, I focus a lot on kind of the data side of recruiting, because a lot of recruiters are really crap at that. Like, a lot of them are like really good at selling, but then when it comes to the applicant tracking system and data portions of that, they don't record anything, and then you have no insight into how you're doing. So I'm like super data focused when it comes to like recruiting. So I asked them like how they would build out like basically like a recruiting system from scratch is like a word that a case study basically that I do with them. Other than that, it's just like, do they have a pulse, and do they feel like they're trying to like sell you, or like a lot, like, you can kind of tell if someone's like genuine, or if they're just kind of like, I have a great opportunity for you, and like, I know nothing about it. It's like, cool, like I just asked you a bunch of questions and you know nothing about what you're hiring for, like that's great. So kind of like think about like what you would want out of a recruiter that's like talking to you. I think it's kind of hard when you're trying to recruit a recruiter as a programmer, because I think ultimately recruiters are good at seeing through the bullshit of other recruiters pretty well, but it's sometimes kind of hard to see that if like you don't know the world that they live in. So that's pretty difficult, but I think the best way would probably be like, if anyone reaches out to you, reach back out to them and say, hey, I don't want a job, but do you want a job? I think you'd make a great recruiter here, and this is why, and tell them the problems that you're trying to solve.
This would be a honeypot for recruiters. So someone is, I don't know who this is, Green Pen. They're interested in your story. How did you become a technical recruiter?
Oh, okay, so I fell into it. I graduated from school and didn't know what to do. I was going to Berkeley and I thought I was going to go into like nonprofit work. And then I worked in nonprofit for like way too long during school, and then decided by the time I graduated I didn't want to work in nonprofit anymore. And it was too slow for me. So I got a job at PagerDuty when there was only 40 people there. And I basically did like kind of everything. I was like an office manager, receptionist, recruiter, kind of you name it, like anything kind of HR-y or admin-y, like I did it. And I really liked it. I was only there for like contract for a while, and then I maybe moved into like a technical sourcing role, and then tried the business side of recruiting at Lending Club, and I was like, whoa, no thank you. I do not want to be a business recruiter, that's for sure. And then a friend of mine reached out to me and asked if I wanted to work at Funding Circle, and I was like, yeah, it's like, seems like cool space, and already worked in fintech before, so I think it was just, I really liked the energy of PagerDuty and like the people that I interacted with on the day-to-day, and I was like, this is a lot of fun. Actually though, so it's not really a secret, but I'm actually moving out of recruiting and moving into technical project management in like a few months. So Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so are there any things about Clojure that make it different for hiring?
Well, I mean, I think that the Clojure community is pretty tight-knit. I think I was saying that in terms of the branding side of things, is like you actually have a big leg up in that because it is so tight-knit and people are actually attracted to it and want to learn it. And you guys are so passionate, like so passionate. Yeah, I think those are a couple of things. I think that, you know, you're always striving for like improvement and like you can like see that within everybody. Like the teams, like the Clojure teams at Funding Circle are just like, they're kind of mind-blowing, they're kind of like the theory that they come up with and things like that as well. So, I mean, I think the newness of it, I think, you know, I'm sure like, I mean, for like a lot of you feel like Richardson's a good leader. I'm sure you all have like, you know, your own different opinions as well too on various different subjects of that. But yeah, I think that the fact that it's been such a close-knit community is definitely a big one.
So do you think as it grows, it'll change? That you'll see a different kind of...
Well, I haven't seen a change so far, so it's kind of hard to tell. Like, I mean, I love to be able to predict the future, but unfortunately I can't. I think that, you know, I think with anything it does change, but like I think what I was saying with, this can be, you know, applied to not only your company, but to Clojure, having like a strong set of mission, vision, and values means that if you continue to keep focus on those, like shared goals, even as you grow, you won't lose the integrity of them, right? And I think that's a big thing for us, and a big thing for Funding Circle as well, is our CEO has been really particular about like, I don't care how big we get, I don't want us to become one of those companies where we're just like, this is finance, you know, and you know, you'll be quiet and do your work, and I'll have a community around it. So I think as long as you stay passionate around it, I think that will stay.
So like, if you put out a job, just to compare, like if you put a Clojure job listing and a Java job listing, like what would your expectations be? Like, I mean, obviously you probably get more.
I get a lot of shit resumes for the Java one, and probably a lot better ones for the Clojure one. I have to do a lot of screening for the Java job, and be like, nope. All right, okay. And then the Clojure one, I probably get a lot more. I probably get a lot less applications, but the proportion of applications I get would be higher quality.
I don't know.
And then Ruby would be somewhere in between those.
Yeah, this is kind of the opposite question. Do you think that Clojure jobs have that same quality? That they're...
That's really hard to quantify. I think that, you know, it really depends on where you work. Like, I've seen a lot of Clojure projects that have been just kind of like, you know, like Capital One acquired a company, and like they had Clojure engineers, and you know, I was talking to people about it that worked there, and they're like, oh yeah, like Level Money is what it was when they acquired them. And we were like super stoked about it, and then like 6 months later, they're like, can I work at Funding Circle? Like, they just got rid of the project, and I'm like, not again. I think it really depends. Like, I think it depends on where you work. I think it depends on how you structure it, because Clojure is not the be-all, end-all, right? Like, just because you're programming in Clojure doesn't mean your company's miraculously amazing, you know? Like, you need to still, like, there's so much more than just the programming language. It's everything else that's around it, too. It doesn't just create, like, an amazing job. So really, I mean, I think, sure, that's what I was saying about retention, is, like, you might have an interesting problem by having Clojure, but then if you don't have a culture of learning and development, if you don't have a culture of, like, supporting one another, it kind of doesn't matter that your problem's interesting, because it's still sucked to go to work.
Right. I mean, I've had people tell me that they would never program in JavaScript, right? But then I'm like, well, what if it's a better company?
Yeah, right? Like, why be so specific about it if ultimately, like, the company that you're about, I'll only work in Clojure, even if, like, it's, like, really terrible, like, the place that I work, right? It's like, I mean, there's always a happy medium as well, too.
So, I guess it was about a year ago, there was a Stack Overflow survey of people reporting their salaries, and Clojure was, like, the highest paid worldwide. And
I'm not surprised.
So do you think Clojure programmers get paid more?
Yeah, I do.
Do you know why that is?
It's a niche skill. There's less. You're a rarity. Like you know. Yeah, exactly. It's supply and demand, right? There's less of you, therefore you make more. So that's why I don't tell people ask for what you want, right?
So if you were going to give one, I'm still with that.
Well, again, right, like it's all about location, so, you know, a Clojure engineer in Arkansas probably doesn't make as much as a Clojure engineer in San Francisco, you know, because that's just, again, salary.
Question.
Question related. There's a article about how they're going to change the model of the salaries location. Saying that it's
Do you feel like it's unethical?
it seems like it might be because people are hiring a salary for without even not for business.
Right. That's really interesting.
Can you repeat the question? Can you repeat the question?
Oh, the question was, is it unethical to pay someone in, say, San Francisco more money than, say, someone in Arkansas? Because ultimately they're pretty much doing the same job, so why should one person make more than the other just based off of location? That's really interesting. So actually, I'll tell you how I feel about it, but I'll also tell you a little story. So I had somebody that I was interviewing, and they had gone to university in the US, and they wanted to move back to London because they're from London. And salaries, as you saw on the slides, right, salaries in London are like way lower, like average, like, you know, 55 pounds, £1,000 a year, right, versus like, you know, so that's like, you know, it's like $75,000 a year versus San Francisco, it's like 150 or something like that, right, it's like twice the difference. And so I was interviewing this candidate, but he wanted to move to London, and we gave him an offer, and he was like, wow, it's really low. I'm like, well, it's London. He's like, well, I want a San Francisco salary in London. I'm like, wow, man, I'm pretty sure every single person in London who works there wants San Francisco salary. So it's kind of hard because, like, if you're basing everything off of market data, right? I understand that kind of like, oh, we're doing the same job, but ultimately, if you think about purchasing power, your purchasing power in Arkansas, even if you're on a lower salary, is actually higher probably than someone who has a way higher salary in San Francisco, but like is paying $4,000 a month to live in a shoebox, right? Like, so, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily unethical. I think, if anything, if you're living like in an area where it's like relatively cheap to live, it's like, you know, you have to think about, you're weighing how much the person's ultimately taking home, not what their number says on their pay slip, right? Because your take home in San Francisco, even if you have a $150,000 salary, is probably way less than someone in Arkansas who's got like a $100,000 salary, right? So I don't personally think it's unethical, but I think it's more about the take home and what you're actually able to put, like your purchasing power, than it is about the actual salary. But that's really interesting. That's an really interesting like thought, because from a business perspective, if you're just talking about like two engineers that do the same thing, should they not just be made? So out of curiosity,
Well, why wouldn't you just hire people out of Arkansas? Because they're cheaper to the business.
yeah, I don't know.
Is there an advantage to having developers in San Francisco?
So I think the big thing is like where you can attract talent, right? So if you're going to make your headquarters in Arkansas, and you want your team to be on site, it's probably going to be pretty difficult to hire a big team, right? You go to where the like hub is of like people, right? So San Francisco, and I said this earlier with like, you know, Pandora moving to Oakland, or from Oakland to Atlanta, and it's really interesting because I feel like people are doing that a lot and moving their locations around, but I just feel like they're just, within a couple years, like they're just catching up with themselves. They're all becoming expensive. Like it's really expensive now to live in Austin, Seattle, Portland, all the places were cheaper before, and then all these people in Portland who are like, let's keep Portland weird, or like, what are all these techies doing here? Like, come on, man. So I think it really just, like, it's gonna follow itself, like regardless, right? So that's what I'm saying, if you can hire remote, then it's great, and you can have like a business that's kind of centered around that, where you have really good written documentation and really good communication, then that's awesome, right? And you have like an opportunity there where, you know, it's gonna be less costly to hire, and you have a way bigger population of people that you can hire from.
Yes.
Is there a difference between hiring for a small team versus the larger teams that you're involved with?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like, are you talking about small team as in like the whole company's really small?
Yes.
Yeah, of course, right? Because if you think about it, I mean, it's really, it scales. So you can think about like, you know, you have a small team and you're really looking for like this particular person that you need to have this person in order for you to get this project done, right? Like that's the difficulty of it because you're looking for very specific people because you don't have the ability to hire kind of a wide breadth when you're a larger team and you can kind of fill people in. That being said, once your team gets really large and you're like kind of like, okay, things are going really well, if someone leaves, you're back in the same situation as a small team where you're like, this person left, now we have to hire this specific type of person, right? So when you're building up your team super quickly, yes, the kind of first initial like momentum that you get, like so for example, we had an investment in the kind of the middle of the summer of last year, and I came back from London and in like August and was told like, okay, so we have to hire, you know, 40 Clojure developers globally by the end of the year. I'm like, it's a lot of people. And honestly, there's just very few of me, right? You know, but like the first kind of like wind of it was like was relatively easy, right? Because you have the opportunity like, oh, we have mid-level, we have senior, we have junior, you know, cool. Let's just kind of bring people in and we can train them up. But then towards the end, it gets really, really hard because now you're like, no. We have all those people, but now we just need like this person. They have to have like, you know, principal level engineer with 10 plus years of experience, and they have to know Kafka, and they have to know Clojure. So they have to know Clojure and Kafka streams. Like, how many people, you know, with 10 years of experience, they've only been around for like a couple of years that Kafka streams has. It's like, they can't be an expert in it. So then it becomes difficult. So I think there's a lot of similarities between hiring for like a large team and hiring for a small team. But I think, yeah, I think like it's hard to get that momentum going when you're small because you're really just looking for the particulars.
Do you have any insights as to why salaries are so much lower in London and Paris, where like you take home, you know, they're expensive cities?
Right. So I mean, I think salaries all over the U.S. are much higher, right? I have like my theory on it is that a lot of the things that you pay for in the U.S. You don't have to pay for in Europe. So socialized healthcare, in terms of university education. A lot of those things. A lot of people come out of school and they're like, yeah.
It's kind of so that nowadays if you get 55,000 per year, your boss has to pay 100,000
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So actually he's paying 100.
Right. Yeah. So what you're saying, his response was basically like in Paris, like if you have a salary of 55, your boss is actually paying like 105 to have you because of all the other different things that come along with it, right? So there's that aspect too. And I think, you know, also just in competition regions-wise, like, you know, London's becoming a tech hub, so is Berlin and Paris and everything, but Silicon Valley took off first, really, right? And then that's just kind of been the mode where the hub has been, right? And then people have like been like, I'm tired of living in San Francisco, so it's so freaking expensive here, I'm gonna go somewhere else, right? And then that drives up salaries across the board. So I think it's just like a chain domino reaction over time too.
Okay, last question because it's lunchtime.
Do you have a budget or a plan for people to work remote? So let's say they want to be in a space like, you know, if they can't work out of their home for some reason, do you budget that or plan that?
Yeah, we're not really scaled on the remote side to have a particular specific streamlined plan. We take it on a case-by-case basis. We try to be as flexible as possible with that and come up with like, you know, budgets for certain things and so on. I mean, with Portland, it was like when 3 people were moving up there, we're like, cool, we'll get you an office. Like that, like there's 3 of you, like now we have an office to work in if you want to. And then we get bigger and bigger offices as we hire more people in Portland and so on. And you know, if people ask, then generally we can kind of look into that, or at least reflect it in like, you know, salary so that they can actually afford to do it themselves. I don't have like a great answer for you because we haven't really gotten to a point where it's like big enough that I can be like, yes, this is the exact process that we use.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah.